Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to build this this side wall that's going to run all along here. So what I want to do is I actually want this wall to butt up against that wall, as well as I want this wall to run past. I actually want it to run along here. So it's actually going to run all the way to the outside of the floor here. So in order to accurately measure this, I always rely on my chalk lines. So I read 89 and 1/8. So what I actually have to do to that measurement is I have to add on 3.5 inches to that measurement. So 89 1/8 plus 3.5. So for layout of this wall here, the only thing that I'm doing that's a little bit different than normal is because the end of this wall is running long, I need to make sure that I do that L corner, that California corner. So I'm making sure that I have a stud on the end of my wall, and I want to make sure that I've got that flat stud that sits down. On the opposite end, we don't actually need that because that wall is running short. So what I mean by that is this wall here has run short. It actually is butt up against this wall, and you see how this side wall here runs long all the way to the outside of the floor. So that's what I mean by that. So no matter what, we always need to have a stud on the end of our wall. And because the joists don't actually run directly underneath this wall, it doesn't really matter which direction or which side we start our layout from. So I'm probably just going to end up starting it from the front side. Now, I'm going to remember that I do that because what I want to do is I want to make sure that the opposite wall runs the same direction, just for aesthetics at this point. So I'm hooking on here, 3/4 of an inch back from 16, make your X. So if you don't end up having a nail gun like I do, you can still be just as efficient using your hand nails and a hammer. So when using hammer and nails, typically what I end up doing is I always have nails in one hand, hammer in the other. It's pretty straightforward in that sense. Now, one thing that actually makes me a little bit more efficient with my time is I actually take my nails and I want to make sure that they're all rotated in the same direction. So I take all the heads like this, I take them and I flip them so that they're all in the same direction. So what it allows me to do is I can actually easily flick out to the end of my fingertips the next nail each time I'm nailing. So usually what I end up doing is start the nail, I get it in probably about 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch, and I get it set. And what I'll do is I put my foot on the stud in behind, and that helps hold everything all in place. As you're swinging, you want to make sure that you're keeping your eyes on the nail heads themselves. Now, when I start swinging, I'm not holding the hammer way up here. I'm actually holding the hammer relatively low on the handle, and that's just giving me a little bit more swing to my hit. And when I'm doing it, I'm actually using a lot more movement in my wrist than I am in my actual elbow or my arm. So tap it, get it in a little bit. Put your foot on the board and swing with basically just your wrist. When you start getting used to actually making constant connections with it, that's when you can then start throwing your arm into it a little bit more and giving yourself a little bit more strength with your shots. So as you can see, as I'm hitting, I can actually start flicking out the next nail, getting it ready in place. So I can still move relatively quick using hand nails. So one of the things that can actually save your hand a little bit when you're hand nailing is if you find that you're hitting your hand a lot trying to set that first nail, what you can actually do is you can actually rotate your hand so that you're kind of backwards here. Now, it may feel awkward, but think in terms of how much actual like muscle is on the inside of your hand compared to the back. There's not a whole lot of meat on the back of your hands. If you hit your back of your hand, putting in a nail, say like this, it's gonna hurt a lot. Whereas this side of the hand has lots of muscle on the inside of your fingers, so it can be a little bit more resistant. It won't hurt as much if you do end up slipping off the nail and hitting. So when it comes to hand nailing, or even using a gun nail, you want to make sure that you kind of are being careful of where you're actually shooting. So this here is a knot in the board, and this knot here is much more dense than the rest of the 2x4. So if I go to nail into this, it's going to take me a lot more hits to actually get this nail through, whereas with the nail gun, if it's a hard enough knot, it can actually reject the nail, and the nail inside the wood will actually bend and poke out one of the sides of the board. All right, so what I've done is I've actually attached the second top plate on top of the wall. And the only reason why I'm able to do this is because we're not sheeting this wall until the wall is standing. So what it allows me to do is I can actually rack the wall sideways to get this overhanging plate past this wall as we're standing. So this is what I mean by backing in the corner. So if I were to put like a sheet of plywood or drywall in here on this wall, it actually has something for me to screw into the back, as well as the opposite corner here. There's always something in the corner to screw to, as well as if I wanted to insulate all the way out to the outside of the corner, I can always put insulation in behind this stud. And that's probably why this is used the most common in framing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to build the opposite wall, or the wall that's parallel with it. It's pretty much the same process. I'm going to make sure that I lay out the wall from the same point, so that way all of the studs are in the same locations as the wall across from it, as well as I'm going to make sure that the plates are the exact same length. So the far wall there, I actually cut those plates to 92.5 inches, so that therefore I'm also going to cut the plates on this side 92.5 inches. Okay, so when I tie the tops of the walls together, what I'm aiming for is, you see how this little tiny lip there between the two plates? I want to make sure that it's nice and flush, right about there. And I also want to make sure between these two plates that there's absolutely no gap on the inside or the outside. So all I'm doing right now is with my hand here, I'm feeling the outside, making sure that's nice and flush. I can see that there's no gap, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive a nail straight through the top. And what it does is it actually locks the whole corner in together. Make sure that it doesn't move at all. Once I'm pretty happy, making sure that there's no gaps, I can actually fill it in with a few more nails. And for now, I'm leaving them up a little bit, just for whatever reason. If I have to come back and change this during the build, I can adjust this a little bit. Another thing too is I never actually lined up any of these nails with any of the grains of wood. So what I mean by that is this nail here wasn't in line with this nail. So if I actually put a nail back here, there's a very good chance that this 2x4 would crack, and then the strength of these nails would be basically null and void. So that's why I've kind of spaced them out the way I have. So I'm going to do this exact same thing on the opposite side over there. So right here, you see how this stud here doesn't line up exactly flush with the plate? That in the future is actually going to be a bit of an issue for me. When I go to stand this wall in the middle here, this stud is actually going to hold me out from this plate. Therefore, the top of the walls are actually going to lean outwards, so I can't get it 100% flush. So what I'm actually going to have to do is I'm going to have to smash the stud over or smash the plate over so that the stud is all in line with the wall below. There you go, fixed. So when I go up there to attach the top plates as well, because I've slightly bent those nails, I'll also throw in an extra nail just to kind of hold everything all secure.
For the next step in our How to Build a Shed series, you can click the video thumbnail on your screen now, or check the description below for links.